So since I've been gone, since you've been gone, I have missed a lot of stuff while my voice has been dying and I've been traveling. But I wanted to talk about all of this with you guys to just all get on the same page. A lot of you guys have sent me DMs and stuff asking about my opinion on the current state of Assassin's Creed. I put up a video on the main channel going through it, but I figured I would quickly run through my overall thoughts on all this here, because there's been some counters and some people that have brought up things that I wanted to respond to. Basically, very, very, very quick rundown. Mark Alexis Cotier, I'm going to call him Mac for the rest of this video because that's what he's called within his teams and within the company, and it's easier than saying the whole thing. Mac worked at Ubisoft for close to 20 years. He was one of the head honchos working in Quebec for a very long time. I think I met him in passing when I was there for AC Shadows. He was like walking around doing stuff. We said like hi, but I've never like actually spoken to him, but he's like the head honcho guy. He's the one in charge of all Assassin's Creed, literally like franchise director for the last 3 years or so. In 2022, he was given the job to take Assassin's Creed into the next era. Now, what's crucial to understand about all of this, and what I want to get out of the way up front, is to just understand the timelines, okay? So Mac comes in, this is our timeline. This is your entire life. Mac comes in 22, okay? Actually, let's do it this way. Mac comes in 22 and is put in charge of all of AC, okay? So Mac starts. Prior to that, games like AC Hexe were greenlit. Back in like 2019, they were greenlit. So AC Hexe is all the way back here. So Hexe is already greenlit. Games like Mirage, which would come out in 2023, was greenlit back here. So Mirage is greenlit back there. Shadows was greenlit back here. Okay, so all of these like big games and big things came before him. Mac's work since taking over has been on what would happen after Shadows, what would happen in like 2026, 7, 8, 9, 2030, and so on. So he's been in charge of like the big picture stuff. So people who are like, I didn't like AC Shadows, that's Mac's fault. It's not really. Like, yes, he's involved in that studio, so sort of, but the broad strokes vision stuff that he's been working on internally behind the scenes, that we will not see for years to come. But what's interesting is that after he was put in charge of this for the last few years, he's been working on a couple of things, one of which we know and we've seen a lot of, which is the Animus Hub. The Animus Hub was originally leaked as AC Infinity, and that was supposed to be the new big live service platform basically for Assassin's Creed. It was supposed to basically be Call of Duty HQ, where you could boot into all of the Assassin's Creed games. You'd buy a skin in like one game and you can use that skin in another. That's like the idea. To me, it sounds terrible, but we basically bullied them out of doing that. And what we got in the Animus Hub in AC Shadows was very, very bland and lackluster, and is basically just dynamic quests with some like free unlockable skins if you grind enough of these like repeated quest lines and stuff. It was really, really kind of bland. Not that remarkable, but it's expected that with AC Hexe, the Black Flag remake, all of that stuff, that's what we're going to see in the next year. And that stuff will utilize the Animus Hub much more directly than Shadows did. All of those, again, greenlit before Mac started his role as head of AC. What it appears Mac's main vision was for AC was that he wanted to have a different game for every subset of the community. So if you have, for example, you have the entire Assassin's Creed audience, what they used to do is they would try to do like AC Valhalla that has something that appeals to multiplayer fans. And then you have maybe some like sort of stealth missions, but they're not very good, and that's meant to appeal to the stealth players. Then you have the big open world players, and you put open world stuff in there to excite them. Then you have fans that like melee combat, so you have melee in there. And then you have, oh, these players really like maybe the really wacky rainbow sparkle skins. So we'll have like, I don't know, we call these, I don't know what we call them. But you basically have a different bubble for everybody within the fandom. So they each get a piece of the pie. And what they used to do was they tried to put one game that would be the everything game, one game that would provide everything to everybody. Mac's vision was to break that up. Mac wanted to break it up so they would have a multiplayer game, and then they would have a stealth focused game, and then they would have a big open world RPG game, and then they have another multiplayer game, and then they have a VR game. And he wanted to break it up into a bunch of little bitty pieces, each one targeting individual subsets of the fan base. So instead of doing the one gigantic game that does everything, you have a bunch of smaller games that do things better, targeting individual groups. And that's been the vision. That's been the vision. And what was interesting is that Marc-Alexis Gauthier, he was basically booted out of Ubisoft in the last week and a half, 2 weeks. And he later posted to LinkedIn saying it was not his choice. He did not want to leave, but they basically came to him and said that he was not going to remain in charge of the franchise. What he said was somebody closer to the new organizational structure would take over. We'll get to that in a second. And he said that another position was mentioned, but it would not have included any of the responsibilities, the mandate, nothing. It basically sounds like a demotion. And so he decided to leave, which I don't blame him. I personally don't believe that demotions work in most instances, almost all instances. So he decided to leave, but he made it clear on his LinkedIn post he did not want to leave. He loves Assassin's Creed. He's called Ubisoft home his entire career. This is not what he wanted, but that's what they decided. So Ubisoft executives, but more specifically Vantage Studios executives, decided to push him out. Now you might be like, Luke, what the hell is Vantage Studios? Well, you remember Tencent invested $1.25 billion into a new company called Vantage Studios, and Tencent invested that money to gain 25% ownership, and Ubisoft would hold the rest. So Ubisoft contributed Assassin's Creed, Rainbow, and Far Cry into Vantage Studios, and in turn, all of the studios, all the developers, all the talent, everything. And so Vantage Studios is now owned by Ubisoft and Tencent, and they're in charge of these IP. Ubisoft still is in charge of all their other stuff, of Just Dance, of Tom Clancy stuff, The Division, like they still have all that stuff over there. But this other entity, Vantage Studios, is sort of outside of their bubble. It's basically its own thing, but they still own it and have control of it. And that studio is what's shaking things up and pushed Mac out. Now you might be wondering, Luke, who is running this? Well, the new entity, Vantage Studios, is being run by two people, Christophe Drenet and Charlie Guillemot. Christophe Drenet is this gentleman right here, and he actually does have a pretty storied past. He's worked on Skull and Bones. I mean, you name it, he's worked on it. He's done a ton of stuff. I mean, going back ages. Okay, so he's a game developer through and through. He knows his stuff. Okay, he's been around forever and has worked on pretty much everything. Charlie Guillemot is Yves Guillemot's son, and he, previous to this, was working on a project that was described as an anime avatar AI NFT startup. I'm not joking. It was called Unagi, and this is what it looked like. This is literally what he was doing before he was handed the keys to this $4 billion company. It's insane. But like, this is literally what he was doing before he was handed the keys to Assassin's Creed, Rainbow Six, and Far Cry. This is it. The new co-CEO, this was his vision. Okay. Unagi has launched multi-chain Web3 games. Introducing September 2023, Hannah is the main character of the Persona brand and story. Supercharged agent, cutting-edge AI agent with its own proprietary AI agent framework, leveraging the latest innovations. Like, it's an AI NFT girlfriend simulator. Like, what is happening? So this is the guy that thought this looked awesome. This is the guy that's in charge now. And he pushed Mac out to put, in Mac's words, somebody in position who was closer to the organizational structure. Now, like every alarm bell in my head is ringing at this point. Not only do I think that the idea that Charlie Guillemot has been put in charge of this is insane. I mean, it just is patently absurd. It's absolutely insane. And as far as I can tell, there's a couple of ways to read the organizational structure comment. On the one hand, it could be that they're going to bring in some of his buddies from his Unagi Games project. He could bring in, as you can see, Charlie Guillemot, co-founder. Maybe he brings in Remy or Pierre or Matthew, and they bring them in as some of his buddies from this project, and they get promoted and they're in charge of all of Assassin's Creed, and Assassin's Creed is turned into a big Web3 NFT nonsense thing. That's one way of reading it, is that it's just people like his buddies. The other way of reading it that some people have brought up that I think is interesting, and this is what I mentioned in that main channel video, is the potential for Tencent to bring in somebody that they've hired and that they've worked with for a few years at this point, who has a experience working on massive Assassin's Creed games. And that's Ashraf Ismail. He's been working under a Tencent subsidiary in Montreal for a few years after he was pushed out due to a scandal in 2020. He was the game director on AC Black Flag, on AC Origins, on AC Valhalla, literally some of the most successful Assassin's Creed games in history. He was the game director on. So some people think that Tencent, as part of their influence on this whole thing, have said, get him in position and make him in charge of Assassin's Creed. Doesn't need to be the front-facing, like public-facing person, but get him in charge, because Tencent doesn't care about the scandal. What was the scandal? Long story short, so to be clear, he was not, as far as I'm aware, he was not found guilty of anything in a court. He was not charged with anything, unlike other people within Ubisoft. There were people within Ubisoft who literally were found guilty in a court of like psychological abuse, okay? He was not one of those people. He was not found guilty in a court. So I want to preface with that. But it was alleged that he was using his position as a head honcho within Ubisoft to like go to gaming conventions and then hook up with girls, cheating on his wife, being like, hey, baby girl, do you want to see the next Assassin's Creed game? Well, I direct it. I could tell you all about it. I could show you some screenshots if you come back to my hotel room. Like gross power discrepancy stuff. That's what was alleged. I don't know if that was ever proven or demonstrated to be true, but that's what was brought up. And as a result, he was booted out. There you go. But he was scooped up by Tencent and put in Timmy Studios, and has been working there for a while. But going back to this, a lot of people think that Tencent, who, let's be honest, they don't really care about any of this. Tencent will go and put Ashraf in position and in charge. Now, honestly, Ashraf, I don't know about the things that were alleged. I don't know if that actually happened, because again, it's alleged. But setting that aside, literally just looking at it in terms of Assassin's Creed as a franchise, he does know what he's doing. And I think what Tencent probably is primarily interested in is getting the franchise to perform well. And so if they're like, hey, what's the best guy for this job? Somebody that knows what they're doing with Assassin's Creed. Oh, he's got kind of a messy history, whatever. I don't think Tencent cares. And they would put him in position. Maybe not a public facing position, a position where he's like doing interviews with people. But they could put him in a senior position to make big decisions. Beyond that, some people have suggested maybe Darby gets handed the position. That would surprise me. I don't think it's Darby's, I don't think it's what Darby would like to do, but maybe you could see that. He's been working with them for a few years, writing stuff, so it's possible. But the point is, with all this stuff, the reason why I've been very, very bummed by the news of Max, maybe not bummed, I'm very, very cynical right now as it pertains to Max's departure and who's going to replace him. It's just because I've seen Ubisoft is signaling who they're willing to put in charge of this stuff, and it's a series veteran and somebody that's worked on the production side for a very long time, and then it's the CEO's son who has demonstrated that he has no freaking idea what he's doing by working on a big project like Unagi which is an AI NFT girlfriend simulator, Web3, whatever. I have zero confidence in his capabilities. He, I think, would do a pretty solid job. He'd do just fine. It'd probably be more of the same, frankly. Nothing really would change. But with this guy being the CEO's son and being co-CEO, that makes me very, very worried. So I'm skeptical. It is true that Mac was taking the series in a direction I personally didn't like. I didn't like a lot of the direction with like the Animus Hub and trying to make these games just like the most generic mass market appeal stuff ever. But I personally don't feel that they are going to be putting somebody better in position. And if they do, I will make a video about it and we will celebrate that they put somebody in that knows what they're doing. And who knows, maybe they will put somebody in position who's worked on AC, who's worked on AC for like 20 years and really knows the franchise and loves it and knows all of the lore and is like an original designer from AC2. Maybe we get that. Maybe. I just personally don't think that's very likely. But if we do get that good news, I will celebrate it and we will cheer it on and be all excited about it. But as of right now, the example that we have of leadership is Christophe Drunet and the literal personification of the term Nepo baby, which is like, seriously, if you look up in the dictionary, nepotism, it's just this guy's face. So I'm just not that confident. Yeah, I just, man. So anyway, we will see what happens with all of this, but the current state of Assassin's Creed, I think is much more shaky now than I think it was even 6 months ago, which is worrisome. I think we will see stuff like Invictus come out. We will see stuff like the Black Flag remake and Hexe, and I expect all that to probably be pretty good, honestly. I think the Black Flag remake will be really fun to replay that with a lot of new bells and whistles. I think Hexe sounds genuinely very interesting, an Assassin's Creed game, but built and crafted narratively to be much darker and grounded and gritty. Like, that sounds very interesting to me. So I think all of that will be really solid, but it's what comes after that where we'll start to see the impact of this new leadership. And so after that, like 2027 and onward is when we'll actually start to see what's changed. And that's what I'm more worried about. So there you go. He took my thing.